After the accident, everything about our lives slowed down. My 12-year-old son, Eli, once a boy who dashed across parks and leapt from stairs 2 at a time, now moved cautiously, 1 step at a time, with the steady click of a metal crutch. His right leg had been shattered in a collision with a drunk driver. He'd spent weeks in the hospital, and when he came home, he was quieter. Not broken, just watching the world differently. We moved to a quiet suburb in the hopes of starting fresh. It was one of those neighborhoods that prided itself on clean sidewalks, uniform hedges, and a smiling HOA board that disguised its rules with the language of community pride. Leading that charge was Karen. Karen was in her 50s. Her blonde bob was carefully maintained, but her eyes betrayed a deep bitterness. She walked the streets with a clipboard in one hand and judgment in the other. She was the kind of person who could spot a mailbox an inch too tall from 3 houses away. I noticed her watching us the first week we moved in. Her gaze lingered on Eli, on the way he moved, on his crutch. She never smiled, just nodded coldly and walked away. The first complaint came within days. She left a note on our door. Please ensure your child does not leave items obstructing the sidewalk. This includes assistive devices. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Surely no one would complain about a child recovering from a traumatic accident using a crutch. But it wasn't a mistake. It was a warning. Then came the stares, the sighs when Eli took too long crossing the street, the way she would stand near the end of her driveway, arms crossed, as if policing the very air he breathed. It was subtle. At first, the kind of cruelty that hides behind plausible deniability. But everything escalated on a quiet Thursday afternoon. Eli had taken to drawing. It calmed him, gave him a sense of control. That day, he was sitting near the sidewalk, just a few feet from our front yard, sketching birds in the trees. I watched him from the kitchen window. His face was relaxed, his pencil moving in fluid strokes. It was one of the few times I saw him at peace. That's when Karen appeared. She walked up fast, shoulders tense. I couldn't hear what she was saying from the window, but I could see the movement of her arms, the way she gestured toward the crutch lying next to Eli on the ground. Then, without warning, she lifted her foot and kicked it. The crutch clattered across the pavement. Eli flinched, his body twisting sideways as he tried to maintain balance. For a moment, I froze. There was something so shocking, so viscerally wrong about it that my brain rejected it. By the time I ran outside, the real damage had already been done, not physical, but something deeper. Eli didn't cry. He didn't yell. He didn't even look surprised. He simply turned his head and stared up at her with a calm, slow blink that made her falter. There was no drama, no shouting match. Eli stood without help. His leg trembled, but he stood anyway. And he looked at her the way a surgeon might look at a tumor with detachment and absolute clarity. Karen stepped back. Not far. Just enough that I could see the first flicker of fear. Eli bent, picked up his crutch, and said nothing. He walked back inside with a steady pace, ignoring her completely. That night, he placed his sketchbook in my lap and walked away without a word. I opened it slowly, expecting birds and branches. Instead, I found a portrait of Karen, but not a flattering one. It was haunting. He had drawn her not as a woman, but as a figure of decay. Her features sagged, her smile stretched into something grotesque. The clipboard she always carried had become a blade. The bushes behind her were aflame. Her eyes were empty sockets, not bloody, not violent, just void. She looked like someone who had stared into a mirror and lost herself. There was no caption, no explanation. The next morning, her tone changed. She left a handwritten apology on our porch. A single sentence, unevenly written. Tell your son I didn't mean to scare him. But she had, and not in the way she thought. Eli wasn't scared of her. He scared her. Not with threats, not with violence, but with truth. He had seen her for who she really was, and shown it back to her in a way no one else dared. Karen stopped walking the block after that. Her clipboard disappeared. Within weeks, she had stepped down from the HOA board. 2 months later, a moving truck arrived. No one helped her pack. Eli never brought it up again. He just kept drawing. But he taped one picture to the back of his bedroom door, the one of Karen, the one that ended her reign of control. And whenever someone asked me if my son ever got justice for what happened to him, I smile. Because justice doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it just looks like someone finally being seen and not liking what they see.